Welcome to our luxurious studios at First Star Logistics in the trenches with Dave Lapham. And we're going to go live here discussing what just transpired. We just got done with a Zoom conference call with Bengals head coach Zac Taylor, talking about the decision-making process to get down to a 53-man roster, how tough that is. Those conversations have to be difficult, looking across the desk at a young man whose dreams are being crushed. It's got to be a tough proposition. I, fortunately, never was put in that situation, and I was blessed. There's no question about it, to have played 12 years and not had to have that sit down across from a head coach talk like that and deciding what you're going to try to do with your future and if it's going to continue to be football or not. So because everybody that got let go today, and there's 800 plus out in the streets in the National Football League right now, every single one of them did everything they possibly could do. You know, it's not like it was a lack of effort, or sometimes it's a numbers game. Sometimes you're just not quite good enough and have to go find your other life's work, whatever that is. But I'm sure it's a very tough day for head coaches in the National Football League, as well as the players that get let go. But the light at the end of the tunnel is there is a 16-person practice squad that's going to be put together. And the Bengals hope they have an inside track on guys that they desire to bring back to that 16-man practice squad. Other teams are doing the same thing. And you have to figure that just about every single team will have an advantage because the team knows the player knows the team knows how well the player understands their system, the player knows how well he understands that team's system. So there is some synergy there, and there's something to be said for being with the team during OTAs, mini camp, through training camp, as opposed to starting over somewhere else. But the bottom line is, if another team contacts you who has a better opportunity for you at a position than the position group you're trying to make with the Cincinnati Bengals at some point in time off the practice squad, you go to that football team. And it used to be the case where they were allowed to give some practice squad players a little bit of a bonus to go to their football team. I'm not sure what the rules and regulations are on that at this particular time. I do want to mention a few details about different lists that players can be on and how long they're unavailable to the football team while being on those lists. Unfortunately, Joseph Asai was put on injured reserve. He was put on injured reserve before the 53-man cutdown. He was part of that process to get to the 53-man roster. He didn't become a member of the 53-man roster, then get put on injured reserve. If that were the case, if he were part of the 53-man roster and then decided to put him on injured reserve, they could bring him back in 3 weeks. There's no reason to do that with Joseph Asai, unfortunately, because the meniscus tear that he had repaired, where he tore it vertically, and it had to be sutured back together instead of a horizontal tear and just that portion of it carved out and smoothed over. He had the big procedure, and he's out for the year. So they're going to be down an edge rusher in Joseph Asai, the third-round pick in this year's draft, unfortunately. But if you do make the roster, the final 53-man roster, and you get put on injured reserve, you can be brought back in 3 weeks. And unfortunately, I think there's an edge rush candidate that fits that bill. Khalid Kareem, he's got a labrum problem in his shoulder. I think initially they felt that the labrum may have been torn. If it had been torn, he would have been put on injured reserve before the 53-man roster, final 53-man roster, like Joseph Asai. The fact that it's not torn, but it's strained, he was on the 53-man roster, but then if he gets put on injured reserve, if it's bad enough, the strain is bad enough where they think he's going to be out multiple weeks, more than a week or two, say 4 or 5 weeks, whatever the case may be, he could be put on injured reserve and then brought back after 3 weeks and then have a week or two of practice before they activate him for a football game. So I think that's going to be interesting to follow in terms of how bad the labrum is for Khalid Kareem. And that's another edge guy, obviously. Cam Sample, another guy who was drafted this year. Khalid Kareem was drafted in 2020. Cam Sample drafted here in 2021, and Joseph Asai in the third round drafted in 2021. Asai's on injured reserve. Cam Sample's fighting a little bit of a shoulder issue. and Cam Sample can help him. He can help him inside. He can help him outside as well. And he's one of the fourth-round picks that the Bengals had of their multiple fourth-rounders. So hopefully he's able to contribute right away because, like I said, he can rush inside as a three-technique defensive tackle, rush on the perimeter as well. And then, of course, Wyatt Hubert, who had a non-football related injury when he tore his pectoral in the weight room, he's out he's out for 6 weeks. He can be brought back after a 6-week time frame. So it's interesting. We'll see. Hakeem Adeniji can be brought back after 6 weeks as well. He tore his pectoral. Another offensive line candidate. He could be brought back after 6 weeks. So there's some jerry-rigging that goes on in terms of formulating your roster, deciding when to put guys on these injury lists based on the severity of the injury and how well you can time it with respect to how soon they'll be recovered from that injury. So all that is part of the equation as well. In my estimation, no real big shockers in terms of numbers at each roster. When I did a projection on the 53-man roster here a while ago, it turned out to be exactly the same number breakdown as it is in this final 53-man roster this Tuesday, August 31st. And it's not the final roster. They still could make some trades. They still could pick guys up off the waiver wire and add them to their 53-man roster. They can add guys to their practice squad from other teams. So the roster isn't complete. But I had 25 offensive players, 25 defensive players, and 3 specialists. The 3 specialists, Clark Harris, the long snapper, Kevin Huber, the punter, Evan McPherson, the place kicker, all came into fruition. I said there'd be 7 wide receivers. There are 7 wide receivers. And the battle of the Trents went to Trent Irwin, and he earned it. Trent Irwin made a big catch, contested catch, got hit in the process big time. The one where he didn't make the catch, and they ruled a fumble, he got hit in the head. And the fumble was offset by the penalty with the illegal contact to the head. And he made plays on special teams. He made plays at the slot receiver. He made plays at outside receiver. So Trenton Irwin won that 7th wide receiver position fair and square. Trent Taylor, the veteran, was terminated by the Bengals, cut and terminated. So that was a battle that went on. At the offensive tackle position, both Fred Johnson and Isaiah Prince made the football team. Which one will be on the 46-man roster? This is the final consideration. You made the 53. Now are you going to be active on game day, or are you going to be one of the 7 inactive players on game day off that 53-man roster? But I projected 10 offensive linemen would be on the roster, 4 tackles and 6 inside linemen, and that's exactly how it broke down. Did it end up being totally what you might have thought? I didn't project a trade of Billy Price. I didn't project Michael Jordan necessarily being let go, but Trey Hill came on strong. Trey Hill earned it. Trey Hill earned the job. He and Trey Hopkins showed that the injury concerns shouldn't be that big of a concern. And at that point, they decided to stay with the trade that they had consummated with the New York Giants. If either one of those centers had been nicked up in the last preseason game against the Miami Dolphins on Sunday, you better believe Billy Price wouldn't have been traded. But nothing happened to the 2 of them. They're both healthy enough to participate in regular season game number 1. So Billy Price was moved. Michael Jordan was released. Jackson Carman made enough progress in the coach's eyes. And Deontay Smith had made an impression much earlier in training camp to warrant keeping them at the guard position, backing up the 2 veterans, Quentin Spain and Xavier Suafilo. So they moved on from Michael Jordan. But the composition of the offensive line, 4 tackles, 6 interior, center, and guard types, composed that 10-player unit. Tight end, C.J. Uzomah, Drew Sample. I projected 3 tight ends. I was saying pretty much the whole time that Mitchell Wilcox, because of his speed and because of how that transitions and translates to what Darren Simmons wants done on special teams, Mitchell Wilcox can run. He had that 20-yard catch down the middle of the football field and got blown up, lost his helmet, had a concussion in the meanwhile, but they think he's going to be out of concussion protocol in time for the regular season opener on the 12th. And that's one of the beauties of having a bye week. Guys that get nicked up at the end of the preseason, you have an extra week. You have 2 weeks to get healthy. for the opener, not just one. You can physically get ready. So Mitchell Wilcox is one that made the football team. We have somebody asking about no one played more tight end in the preseason than Thaddeus Moss, and he gets cut for it. Why? Well, because they felt like Mitchell Wilcox as the third tight end has more potential, because they feel like Mitchell Wilcox can give them more special team snaps than Thaddeus Moss. When you're the third tight end, you have to play special teams. And I'm sure Darren Simmons had a vote in which tight end he would rather work with in special teams. And Mitchell Wilcox probably gave him more to work with in terms of size and speed. I'm not saying Thaddeus Moss isn't a good football player. He's a hell of a football player, but he's smaller than Mitchell Wilcox and he's slower than Mitchell Wilcox. So ultimately, as a third tight end, they decided to try to develop Mitchell Wilcox's skill set a little bit. Thaddeus Moss, to me, is a perfect practice squad candidate. I hope that Thaddeus Moss comes back as a practice squad guy, one of the 16 practice squad players for the Cincinnati Bengals, and I think that would be a big deal. Trent Taylor, loves to see him come back as a practice squad player. Every player that was waived by every team in the National Football League, no matter how many years service you have because of COVID, is eligible to come back on the practice squad. So I would not be the least bit surprised to see Thaddeus Moss come back as a practice squad player. Some of the guys that made the team at the end of the wide receiver position group projected 7 wide receivers, and 7 made the final roster. Mike Thomas, Stanley Morgan, special teams. They're both gunners covering punts for Darren Simmons. They give Darren Simmons a lot of snaps on special teams. When you're at the bottom portion of a roster in terms of position group, special teams carry the day. You're not only competing against the few wide receivers, you're competing against cornerbacks. You're competing against running backs. You're competing against everybody else that may give Darren Simmons some of these snaps on special teams. 2 quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, Brandon Allen, Kyle Shermer, let go. Practice squad candidate, obviously, unless they feel like there's another one on the waiver wire that they'd like to develop and see more potential than Kyle Shermer. Joe Mixon, Samaje Perine, and Chris Evans make the football team. Jaquez Patrick, how can I not make the football team? I gave you everything I had. I had some great games. I ran over people. He did. Practice squad candidate, big time. Don't tell me that Samaje Perine, if he running the ball in the same situation that Jaquez Patrick was running the ball in against that weren't first-team defensive players, you already have a guy, Samaje Perine, that can give you the style of running game that Jaquez Patrick gives you. I'm not saying Jaquez Patrick isn't a hell of a football player, but I'm saying Samaje Perine is too. And Samaje Perine has shown an ability to run routes, catch the football, and most importantly, he is uber solid and sound in blitz pickup. So protecting Joe Burrow is a big factor as well. So Jaquez Patrick doesn't make the cut. They wanted Chris Evans a little bit different, smaller, quicker, route runner, receiver of the football, more of the Giovanni Bernard type running back for the third component at that running back position. So it was a numbers game. And Travion Williams, unfortunately, pulled his hamstring, couldn't compete as much as he wanted to with Chris Evans. And Jaquez Patrick lost basically in the competition with Samaje Perine. And Travion Williams lost in the competition to Chris Evans because they didn't want to double up on the same type of running back. They wanted to have a different skill set with those 3 running backs that they're going to have active on game day. Now, will there be running backs in the practice squad? Damn straight. And there should be. And they deserved it. Let's go to the defensive side of the football. The 3 specialists, 25 offense. Again, 7 receivers, 10 offensive linemen, 3 tight ends, 2 quarterbacks, 3 running backs. Just like we broke it down earlier, 25 players. The numbers worked out exactly like I had anticipated they might. 25 defensive players, 5 defensive ends, 5 defensive tackles, 5 linebackers, 6 cornerbacks, 4 safeties, 10 guys up front, 10 guys in the back end, 5 guys in the middle, 25 offensive players, 25 defensive players. Could those numbers change in the next few days? Very definitely. Very definitely it could, depending on trades. And in my mind, I would still try to work a trade. I have no problem with B.J. Hill as a football player, but the Bengals need an edge rusher They need multiple edge rushers at this point because of injury. I think B.J. Hill is a very sound, solid interior defensive lineman. And basically, they traded Billy Price for B.J. Hill, and they let Mike Daniels go, who's getting long in the tooth. He's physically not what he was just a matter of a year or two ago. So B.J. Hill, I don't have a problem with that. I think, though, I'd be shocked if they weren't trying to trade for an edge rush guy, but they couldn't get an edge rush guy for Billy Price. What they could get for Billy Price was an interior defensive lineman. The New York Giants had a need at offensive line in the inside, and the Cincinnati Bengals had a need at defensive line, more specifically on the edge. But still, if they could get a guy like B.J. Hill, and my understanding is, I guess it's a conditional 7th-round pick, they pulled the trigger. Why not? But in my mind, if you can still make a trade for an edge rusher, that's a very difficult trade, though. If you have edge rushers, even if it's your 4th best or 5th best, you don't give them away. You don't trade them, unfortunately, unless you're getting something of real value back. And I guess the thing that, disappointed me, I would have packaged Austin Seibert and another player to see if I could get an edge rusher. Pretty valuable to have a guy that could put points on the board. Austin Seibert and Evan McPherson had a battle royale. I think Evan McPherson deserved the job at place kicker, but Austin Seibert could help a team in the NFL as a place kicker. The kid had a hell of a camp. He should be kicking in the National Football League, and he will be. But if you could have packaged him and another player to get some sort of an edge rush guy, and it's not going to be any better than maybe a team that is deep at edge rush, their 5th edge rusher, maybe their 4th if you're lucky, but they need bodies on that edge. Because Joseph Asai is on injury reserve. Wyatt Hubert, the 7th-round pick, is on the non-football injury list right now with a pectoral injury, tore a pectoral in the weight room before training camp even started. So 2 draft picks, 3rd round, 7th round, that they executed to bolster the edge on the pass rush aren't even available to him for a minimum of 6 games of the season. Osai, not at all, and Hubert going to be out at least 6. Cam Sample, the other rusher that they drafted in this year's draft, we already talked about. He's fighting a little bit of a shoulder issue, but I think he's going to be okay. He's going to give him snaps, but inside and outside, not just a true edge rush guy, pressure off the edge. Khalid Kareem, like we talked about, he got drafted in 2020. 4 edge rushers drafted in the last 2 years. 3 of them with significant injuries, because Kareem, I think, has that injury in the shoulder that we already talked about with the labrum. And if he's put on injury reserve and is out for a few games, they are dangerously thin at the edge rush position. Darius Hodge earned the job. He had a great training camp. Undrafted out of Marshall, undrafted college free agent as a linebacker. They converted him to an edge rusher, and he did a heck of a job. Now he's going to go against the big boys, everybody's number ones. It's a lot different than a lot of the guys that he played with. He was pass rushing against guys like you and me in some stages during the preseason. So it's going to up the ante in terms of competition a little bit. But if they can work something out and find an edge rush guy, and obviously it didn't work out for Noah Spence. They picked Noah Spence up off the waiver wire and thought that he was just, I guess, okay, just a guy. And they let Noah Spence go. So they're still looking. And there could be other Noah Spence types that they bring in to take a look at off the waiver wire. They could cross all fingers and hopefully make some sort of a trade. But right now they have 5 defensive ends and 5 defensive tackles. Defensive ends, Sam Hubbard, Trey Hendrickson, Khalid Kareem, and Cam Sample, I'm going to list as a defensive end at this point in time, and then also Darius Hodge. At the defensive tackle position, DJ Reader, Larry Ogunjobi, Josh Tupou, BJ Hill, and Tyler Shelvin, the big boy from LSU. He makes the dance. Now, I think he's probably the one that's going to be deactivated on game day. I don't think they're going to go with 10 defensive linemen on the 46-man roster. No more than 9. And if that's the case, I think Tyler Shelvin initially will be deactivated on game day, possibly. I mean, I think that's just a projection on my part. But that's the down lineman, the 10 down linemen. 5 linebackers, Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, Akeem Davis-Gaither, Jordan Evans, Marcus Bailey. No upsets there. Nothing to complain about, I think. Those are the 5 best guys. They all earn the jobs. Keandre Jones and Joe Bacci could be practice squad candidates. We'll see how all that shakes down. And then on the back end, in the secondary, Mike Hilton, Trey Waynes. He probably won't be available on opening day with the hamstring. I mean, his hamstring, he's only into his 2nd week. And it'll be 3 weeks before the opener. It's going to be 4 to 6 potentially. So they may not have Trey Waynes at the very beginning, but they're going to carry him on the roster, I believe. I don't think they're going to put him in injury reserve. I don't know. That's a possibility, though. But I think they'll carry him on the roster because they can bring him back after 3 weeks if they think that's how long and significant that hamstring injury is. But you never know. It could end up being 4 instead of 6, and you don't want to have a couple of weeks where, oh, my gosh, I wish we had Trey Waynes active on our roster. Chidobe Awuzie makes the team at the cornerback position. Darius Phillips, Eli Apple, and Jalen Davis. He beats out Tony Brown for that last cornerback position, and rightfully so. At the line of scrimmage, he had a much better training camp defensively than Tony Brown. Tony Brown is a hell of a special teams player. Jalen Davis is going to have to go a ways to give Darren Simmons the special team snaps that Tony Brown gave him. But if you have an injury like they do with Trey Waynes, and now you're going to start Eli Apple instead of Trey Waynes, Jalen Davis becomes all that much more important. You have to have, more than 3 cornerbacks available to you on a game-by-game basis because everybody's playing nickel packages. You have to have more than 3 cornerbacks, 3 of them out in the field at the same time. You have to have 5 and hopefully 6 corners, and that's what they've got right now, 6 corners, although Trey Waynes is a little bit iffy right now. But Jalen Davis makes the dance. 4 safeties, Von Bell, Jesse Bates, Ricardo Allen, Brandon Wilson. Brandon Wilson will also be the kick return player. Darius Phillips will be your punt returner. So that's the composition of the 53-man roster as we speak. Again, is it the final 53-man roster? Probably not. Could be. Probably not. But I think overall, I think the coaching staff's pleased with the roster depth, in my opinion, except edge rush. Got to figure out edge rush. And had a lot of injuries at the edge rush position over the last couple of years. That has been the one that's been snake bitten. Last year, the interior of the defensive line was snake bitten with a lot of injuries. This year, it's the people on the perimeter, on the edge, getting up the football field, affecting the quarterback every single time he throws the football. That's the goal. You're not going to sack him every time, but you're going to have to affect him, get him off his spot, make him hurry his reads, make him be lazy with his eyes, make him be distracted with his eyes. There's a million ways you can affect a quarterback, and it translates into an easier time on the back end for the secondary. Good coverage can lead to coverage sacks. Good pressure can lead to takeaways, deflections, and incompletions. Got to have both. I think the Bengals are looking pretty good on the back end. Again, I think Trey Waynes is the biggest question mark there physically, but they've played solidly when the number 1s and number 2s were in the game. But edge rush, my biggest question mark. Hopefully it's addressed. But I do feel pretty good about this 53-man roster. We'll see how it shakes down when they start playing for real against Mike Zimmer and the Minnesota Vikings Sunday, September 12th at 1 o'clock at Paul Brown Stadium. We got a couple of questions here. All right, let's see. Skylar, Lap, who's the one guy you believe who should have made the roster? The one guy I believe that should have made the roster? I mean, I guess if I had to pick somebody, well, I think they did a pretty good job, to be honest with you. I mean, Jacquez Patrick, to me, had an outstanding training camp in preseason games. I think he obviously could have made the football team as easily as not. So if I had to pick a guy, and I'd say probably Thaddeus Moss might be in that category as well. Michael Jordan, as training camp went on, the young guys got more and more acclimated and started to come on and close the gap on Michael Jordan. I mean, that's a coach's decision that I can't necessarily, argue with. I mean, the coaches see the players every single day at practice, meetings, on the football field, off the football field, in the locker room, in the weight room. What's the maturity level? What kind of a commitment is there to the football team and trying to become a better football player? So we'll see. We'll see. Another question. I wonder if this is the Brandon Wilson. Brandon Wilson. How does the process go in regards to waive players and re-signings? Okay, well, the process right now is guys that are these players, you get released to free agents, you can sign with another team or re-sign with the Bengals. The veterans are terminated. Mike Daniels, Mason Schreck, Noah Spence, Trent Taylor. They don't have to clear waivers. They're veteran players that as soon as they're let go, as soon as they're cut or terminated, they can go to another team tomorrow. Another team can pick them up immediately, if not sooner. The 20 players that they waived, those are 4 guys that were cut and terminated. The 20 players that were waived, all of these guys have to go through the waiver wire process. And that is just like the draft, the reverse order of how you finish the season. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have to wait till number 32. So the team that had the worst record in the NFL gets the first crack at every single player on the waiver wire. And then it goes in reverse order of success all the way to the very best team that had the best record gets the last crack off the waiver wire, and that's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at number 32. That's why with Austin Seibert, I was thinking, everybody knew the Bengals were going to cut him, but I was thinking if there was a team that didn't think he would get to them off of the waiver wire, because he would have been waived, not terminated, not cut. He's going through the waiver wire process. So if they thought, geez, he might not get to us, what if we're the 18th team on the waiver wire and we've got a need at the kicker position? Are 17 other teams going to pass on him before he gets to us? That's why I was hoping that there may be a possibility to trade Austin Seibert out there and get something for him, maybe a late pick or whatever it might have been. But didn't happen. Didn't happen. But that's the process. That's the process for every player in the National Football League. If they're not vested, if they have 3 years or less experience in the league, they're waived. If they have 4 years or more, after you have 4 vested years, you're vested for retirement. After you've been in the league 4 years or more and you're let go, you're waived. You're cut. You're terminated. If you're let go by a team and you have 3 years or less experience, you're waived and you have to go through the waiver wire process. That's the difference between the two lists. Lap, are you okay with the backup tackles on the offensive line? That's from Gabriel. Gabriel, I am. Honestly, from what I've seen out of the response to Frank Pollock and Frank Pollock's techniques and what he's teaching these guys, you realize, Gabriel, that they gave up 1 sack in the entire preseason. And, Fred Johnson didn't play the entire preseason. He had a quad injury. But Isaiah Prince played a lot of snaps and protected very well. The only quarterback sack came when Trey Hill messed up the sack in the preseason. So to go 3 preseason games and only give up a sack and don't get your quarterback hit very much all that often. Yeah, I'm encouraged by the development of what's gone on with the 2 tackles. Are they finished products yet? No. But Isaiah Prince is long and he's athletic, and I think he's got some possibilities to him. Fred Johnson is long, big, strong, a little stiffer than Isaiah, not quite as athletic as Isaiah, but stronger physically than Isaiah Prince. But I think Fred Johnson and Isaiah Prince are 2 guys you can work with. Now, does that mean all done? No. Check out the waiver wire. Check out what's out there. Check out what was let go. It doesn't have to necessarily be the waiver wire. If there's a veteran tackle that was terminated because they had depth at tackle at the football team that he was trying to make, and he's better than these 2 prospects you're trying to develop. He's got more experience. He's at least as good a football player as they are. He has to be probably a little better football player than they are. And then experience would be a tiebreaker. You're always looking to improve yourself. So you don't sleep on anybody. But I think if you go into the season with those two guys and have to choose one of them to be your third tackle, your swing tackle for a football game, I think you can live with it. I really do. All right, let's see, Ronnie. Thank you, Laph, for being the voice of the Bengals. As a something that played with your nephew Brian. Oh, okay. A Mainer. You're from the state of Maine. As a Mainer that played with your nephew Brian, I'm a proud Bengals fan. Houday from Sanford, Maine. I love it. Yeah, my nephew Brian. That was a tough story. 6'9", 300 plus pounds. Played at Boston College. 3 games. It might have been 2 games left in his career. He has an injury. He gets himself tangled up with a chain gang on the sideline at a game, trying to cover an interception that his quarterback threw, and rips up his knee. Has to have knee surgery. During the surgery, gets a staph infection. I was told that the Cincinnati Bengals were going to potentially draft him in the 3rd round. He was a prospect they had rated on their board as high as the 3rd round. And other teams in the league had the same type of ranking on my nephew Brian. So it's probably going to be a 3rd or 4th round guy. The knee surgery and then the staph infection, which led to another operation. The staph infection ate up the joint in his knee. So he had the knee of an old man well before he was an old man, unfortunately. And sometimes things like that happen. You have to be lucky a lot of times to get to the promised land in the National Football League. And unfortunately, Brian's knee injury was too much to overcome. And I maintain he would have been in the National Football League playing tackle for a team for more than a little while. I know the Buffalo Bills liked him. I know the Cincinnati Bengals liked him. I know there were a lot of teams in the National Football League that liked Brian Lapham. Let's see. My opinion on the safety coming from Achilles' last stand. I'm assuming you're saying the position, not the play. My position on safeties in terms of rule and all that, it's a moot point. But I like the safeties. I think that Von Bell and Jesse Bates, the Killer Bees, I think that's as good a tandem as you're going to get in the National Football League. I think both of those guys have playmaking ability, tremendous playmaking ability, game-changing playmaking ability. Jesse Bates has as much range, can cover as much ground as any safety in the National Football League. And he has really good hands. When he gets to the football, gets his hands on the football, he doesn't blow it. He catches the football. Von Bell is a big hitter. The hit he put on the Pittsburgh Steelers here in Cincinnati, that was a big factor in that football game. Von Bell is physical, and he's really worked on his coverage skills and has improved the coverage skills. He's, in my mind, you can put him in the box and he can do a lot of things a linebacker can do. I like both the safeties. Ricardo Allen, extremely intelligent, is an overachiever. Everybody's always said, you're not going to play college football. You're not going to play in the National Football League. And all he does is continue to prove people wrong. And he's got a prior relationship with Lou Anarumo. And there's a big respect level there between player and defensive coordinator because they have a history together. They understand each other. They know each other's strengths and weaknesses. And I think that Ricardo Allen is going to have a significant impact on the football team. He's got great leadership capabilities. He's one of the guys that players gravitate to on the football field, in the locker room, in the weight room, in the cafeteria. Ricardo Allen wants to be a coach someday. And I think Ricardo Allen's going to be a hell of a coach someday. He gets football. Football's been good to him, and he's been good to football. And Brandon Wilson is extremely athletic. Brandon Wilson is a guy that can make plays at the safety position, and you watch him return kickoffs. I mean, he's got speed to burn. I mean, he can go, from goal line to goal line as fast as any kick return guy in the National Football League. And he's taken multiple returns back for touchdowns. So he gives you value on special teams as well as defensively if need be, in terms of if they decide to go with multiple safeties in a defensive package or whatever the case may be. So, yeah, I like what they've got going on at the safety position. I really do. All right, this one, Web Storytellers. Hey, Lap, hello from Houston. What up, Houston? Are the Bengals 100% sold on their backup quarterback? He's been solid, but, well, Brandon Allen last year got Player of the Week in the National Football League. And you know who it was against? Your Houston Texans. Brandon Allen lit up the Houston Texans, and he got AFC Offensive Player of the Week. So the coaches were not surprised. Zac Taylor and Brandon Allen have a prior history together with the Rams, so they feel comfortable with each other. Brandon Allen is an intelligent football player. Coaches trust smart football players that understand the scheme, and that's a must at the quarterback position. So I think Brandon Allen stepped up in a difficult time last year with the injury to Joe Burrow, and he won that game against the Houston Texans and got AFC Offensive Player of the Week in so doing. So that said a lot to me. And I know that the locker room has a lot of respect for Brandon Allen. So I think they're okay there. I really do. Yay. Okay, William Perry. Is this the fridge? Man, I wonder. He's saying, yeah, I wonder why Lapp never coached, being how close he's been with the team. It's funny you say that. I did have some opportunities to coach. Possibly when Forrest Gregg went to Green Bay, could have been a possibility there. A couple of college coaches over the years, Les Miles, Mac Brown, when Mac Brown was at Texas, might have had some interest in maybe doing something. But I just decided that was either going to coach or do the broadcast. I went to Newhouse School of Communications at Syracuse as an undergrad, hoping that I'd play in the NFL someday. And that if I did play in the NFL someday, when I was done playing, whenever that was going to be, I would stay involved with the game of football, either coaching or broadcasting. And my family really loves Cincinnati. My wife loves Cincinnati. My two kids are married and have two kids of their own, and they are in Cincinnati. So Cincinnati's been good to the Lapham family. So I decided to get into the broadcast end of it and stay in Cincinnati instead of potentially hopscotching all over the country in terms of being a coach. And I'll tell you, coaches' wives, talk about MVPs, because in a 2-year period, they may be in New England, and then they may be in California working in Los Angeles 2 years later. Then they may be in the middle of the country in Minnesota. Then they may be down south in Houston, Texas. You just don't know. And you're picking your family up and moving all over the place. And the wives are the glue, and the husbands are going to coach. Their days are the same. It may be a different stadium in a different location, but the responsibility and the obligations are the same for the coaches. It doesn't change on their end. So, coaches' wives, big salute to each and every one of you. Okay, Rob, your question, how do you feel about this year's undrafted free agency class? We had a player like Hodge in recent history. Let's just go all the way back to Burfict. Whew. Yeah, you probably do have to go back to Burfict, but, Trenton Irwin on the offensive side of things is another, free agent that has panned out. And I think that's the thing that the Cincinnati Bengals, in talking to agents over the years, agents who have undrafted college free agents really take a hard, long look at when the Cincinnati Bengals offer their client an opportunity. Because the Cincinnati Bengals mindset has always been, I don't care how you got here. All I care about is what you do once you get here. And I think history has shown. Zac Taylor referenced it earlier today in our Zoom conference call. He said, long before I came to this franchise, the Bengals had a history of college free agents getting an opportunity and capitalizing on that opportunity and having long, productive careers with the Cincinnati Bengals. So it's just another case in point. And I think that everybody around the league knows that, including agents, not just players, but agents as well. Last question, and we appreciate everybody's interest It's been a lot of fun here going live after the Bengals had their Zoom conference call, giving us the quote final 53-man roster. Final is not really the case. We shall see how final it is. Hey, Lap, linebacker play has been less than ideal for a few consecutive years now. You feel realistically optimistic in the development you've seen in the young linebacker core this preseason? I really do believe that this linebacker core has a lot of athleticism. I think Logan Wilson is a budding star. I think Akeem Davis-Gaither can really run. Jermaine Pratt has got a size-speed ratio that is well above average. Jordan Evans can run for his size as well. And Pratt and Jordan Evans give Darren Simmons tremendous snaps on special teams, as does Marcus Bailey. I mean, if Marcus Bailey's your fifth linebacker, if you want to, stack all the linebackers up, you're in pretty good shape. And you've got some guys that, have football intelligence, can diagnose quickly, and can play downhill. I think Logan Wilson is an every down linebacker. I believe with his abilities, I mean, he started out in the secondary. In high school, he played quarterback. He played defensive back. He was the punter. He was the place kicker. Of course, a little school in Wyoming, little high school, but he was just a freak athlete, and went to Wyoming, and it was in the secondary initially at Wyoming, bigger, stronger. The diet that strength and conditioning people put him on, and hitting the weight room, and worked his way up to a different size and became a linebacker. When you're a linebacker that has defensive back experience and understands leverage and coverage, understands route combinations, understands a lot of that part of it, you've got an edge. And I think he does have an edge defending the pass. And that's not to say he's got plenty of size, and he comes downhill. Once he reads, he's coming downhill right now. He's hitting the gap, and he's hitting you. He's not hitting the gap. He's hitting you, right in the mouth. I mean, he's coming downhill and making a strike on you if you're trying to block him. So I do like the linebacker core. I think, year 1 to year 2 is usually a big growth. And then year 2 to year 3, it's now you spread the wings and you really take off and start to fly. I also think they're coached well. They have a hell of a coach. They have a defensive coordinator that wants to utilize them and put them in the best position they can to succeed. So I think all of it is trending in the right direction. So I do feel good about the linebacker core. I think the linebacker core is probably the most improved position this year that was not addressed by free agency or the draft, because they addressed it last year. I mean, they drafted all those guys last year. So we took a breath and said, let's develop these guys. And I think these guys are going to develop, and I think you're going to see a big jump. You'll see a big jump in their ability to diagnose and make plays and be involved in some game-changing plays. At this point, I want to thank everybody for watching, listening, participating. And it was good to catch up with everybody after the Bengals made their cut down to the 53-man roster that they did. And I want to thank everybody for their insights, and have the best day you ever had. Appreciate you all.